let's start with the kind of tubing that you need with a CO2 system. Now, regular airline hosing that you can buy at PetSmart or Walmart, yeah, it will work for a CO2 system, but if you look at it under a really high power microscope, there's tons of little pores, so the tubing isn't actually all solid. And if you buy silicone tubing, that's kind of like a foggy type plasticky looking tubing, so it's not entirely clear, but you can still see through it, so that's what I'm talking about, like foggy. That tubing also, under a high power microscope, you can see these tiny little pores in it, and over time that will eventually, those pores will get bigger and bigger and bigger. You might not be able to see it just with the naked eye, but CO2 will gradually be leaking out, and it's just a waste. So you need to use the proper hosing with your CO2 system, and the hosing you're supposed to use is really thick hosing. And this is the hosing. It's it's pretty thick, and it's hard to actually secure it onto the little nipple thing, onto the regulator, because it is so thick, and it is hard to secure it onto the diffuser as well. But it works. It's really thick, and the CO2 cannot escape through those pores. If you look at that tubing under a high power microscope, the pores probably aren't even there because the tubing is so thick. There's not enough space for them to create. So you're supposed to use this kind of tubing with CO2 so that you can drastically reduce the risk of CO2 leaking out through the tubing. And it may sound funny, CO2 to say CO2 leaking out of the tubing, but it does happen. And the way you can tell is if you buy cheap airline tubing from, say, Walmart or PetSmart or whatever, you use it with your CO2 system. If you put it up to your nose and you smell it, you can actually smell the CO2 coming out. So if you do that with this tubing, you won't be able to smell anything at all, but of course the plastic or whatever they use to make this tubing. So this is the tubing that I use, and this is the tubing that everybody that uses a pressurized CO2 system is supposed to use. And you can buy it from greenleafaquariums.com. They're not paying me to advertise their website. I'm just saying that's where I bought it, and that's where I really could only find it. I couldn't find it anywhere else. So it was actually pretty cheap. So I mean, if you have the extra cash, like I think it was like $7, pick some up and use it with your pressurized system, because you'll definitely notice a difference. You'll not waste CO2. You'll be actually saving a lot of CO2, and you'll really notice a difference from using that tubing rather than using the cheap tubing you can buy at any store. So let's talk about diffusers now. There's so many different kinds. You can buy a reactor, you can buy a ceramic disc diffuser like I have, you can buy a bubble wall. There's just so many out there, and there's even one that I think is actually really cool, but it does kind of make a lot of micro bubbles in the aquarium, and it kind of does take away from the realism. But it's a little plastic piece that you can hook into the return line from your water pump or for your canister filter, and on that plastic piece it has a little plastic tube where you can hook your pressurized CO2 tubing onto that, and then inside of the little plastic piece there's like a little piece of wood or ceramic disc or whatever, and that diffuses the CO2 into these microbubbles. But then at the same time, since it's hooked into the return line of your water pump or canister filter, those bubbles are traveling through the hose, and they're actually being exposed to water a lot more. So pretty much you could end up actually be getting 100% CO2 diffusion that way. So those things are cool, but then again, you have to modify your return line from your water pump, and then you also have to worry about, well, what if someday it gets loose and I'm not here and the water is going everywhere. So you got to make sure it's really secure. It does create a lot of micro bubbles in the tank, so when you're looking straight at your tank and you're looking at your plants, you will see all these micro bubbles in your tank. So it does kind of look a little weird, but at the same time, it does diffuse CO2 really well. Now, a bubble wall is really not something I really support using, because first of all, yeah, they are actually really cheap, but then again, ceramic disc diffusers are cheap and they work better. So I actually bought my ceramic disc diffuser off of eBay, by the way, for like $5, so pretty good deal. But a bubble wall will work to an extent. It won't even diffuse CO2 probably more than 40%, I would say. But you got to make sure you buy the bubble wall that makes the bubbles travel up the wall, of course. But then at the top, you have to buy the one that has the plastic cap, because in the cap, that's where the bubbles get stored, and that's where they are exposed to water a lot longer and therefore, you know, they diffuse more CO2. If you buy the bubble ball that simply just lets the bubble come out once it's gone through the ladder, you're probably only going to get like maybe 10 or 15% of total CO2 diffusion. So to me, they're really not worth it. They're kind of a waste of money, and they do look cool. I mean, inside the tank, but then again, you know, when you have a planted tank, most of the people that do have planted tanks are trying to create this real, you know, well, real looking underground environment of, say, a rainforest or tropical river or whatever. So when you see this big plastic thing and bubbles going like this, it really doesn't look that natural. But yes, they are cheap and they do diffuse some CO2, but they're nothing compared to a ceramic disc diffuser. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. The ceramic disc diffusers are really, really, really cool, and they're probably the most popular way of diffusing CO2 into your aquarium. Now, like I said, I bought mine off of eBay for like $5, so it's really cheap. They do have much more expensive ones. Like if you buy one from Takashi Amano's website, you can probably spend over $100 on that. It's a little glass, you know, fixture thing with a little ceramic disc diffuser, and he's selling it on his website for $100. So pretty crazy expensive, but you know, you can get away with using the ones that you can buy off eBay for $4. They work practically the same way. But yes, the ceramic disc diffusers do a really good job, especially if you point the output of your water pump, of the water coming back in your tank. If you point that at the stream of CO2 bubbles coming up from the ceramic disc diffuser, it'll actually blow the bubbles further down into the aquarium and expose them to water a lot longer. You can also hook up a little power head and point it towards the output of CO2, or you can point it away and then the bubbles will get sucked through the power head, get mixed in with water a lot more, and then shot out. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can diffuse CO2 with the ceramic disc diffusers, but I like them. They work really well, and like I said, they're probably the most popular. And if you find a good deal on eBay, you can get them really, really cheap for like $5. So yeah, and for me, you know, I'm not, you know, saying this based on any type of data that I've done or any type of accurate data, but based on what I've seen and the results with my plants, you know, the way they're growing really, really well, by the way. I would say that a ceramic disc diffuser, along with all the other extras like a power head and stuff to circulate it throughout the aquarium, the CO2 that is, I would say it's probably about 80 to 85% total CO2 diffusion. So it works really, really well. So aside from all these diffusers I've been talking about, you know, getting 100% CO2 diffusion is, you know, the goal of most aquarists out there, but it's really, really hard, and it's really, really hard to get every single ounce of CO2 out of your system into your aquarium water. Now, you can try. I mean, I've seen things on YouTube, some DIY projects where they have these little plastic cups inside, and the bubbles will just go in there and stay in there and never be released out until they're diffused all the way. So, I mean, you can do like a DIY project and probably get 100% CO2 diffusion. And they probably do sell some products out there where you can get 100% CO2 diffusion. Been saying that too much. I'm getting tied up now. But for the most part, you know, you really don't need 100% CO2 diffusion to get excellent growth and excellent results with CO2. So just don't really be worried about getting 100% diffusion. Be more worried about getting at least 80 to 85%. And the ceramic disc diffusers will work really, really well and help you out with that. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I'll be back with another video soon about my dwarf baby tears that are currently, they still have 1 day in transit. They're almost here. I can't wait to get them. I can't wait to plant them. And I think that's all I've ordered. So, oh, actually, I have ordered a bulb for my, I should say a bulb, I should say a T5 lamp for my lighting system. It's actually, they call it a telefluoroluminance or something like that, but it's supposed to be a lot better for a planted tank. So I'll explain all that in another video. So look out for those 2 new videos coming up. But thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.